Good morning, students. My name is Abigail Toro, and in today's lessons, we will analyze noun and relative clauses in complex sentences. Taken from the classical novel Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, written by Lewis Carroll on November 26, 1856. First of all, we need to clarify what noun clauses are. A noun clause is a dependent clause that acts as a noun or a pronoun. Noun clauses may begin with different words divided into three other classes. We have that clause, if whether clause, and WH clause, which can be exposed by function, context, and main uses. Now that we know the meaning and his basic structures, let's analyze some sentences from the book. Then, to be more specific, let's go to the page 123 of your book. In this complex sentence, the great wonder is that there's anyone left alive. We can identify the subject and the predicate. In the predicate, we found the conjugated verb or main verb is that came into linking verbs. The dependent clause is a noun clause with the structure of a that clause due to that the subordinate clause starts with a subordinating conjunction that. The function of this clause is direct object. The context, in this case, is after a linking verb, and the use is as a statement. Now let's go back to the page number 5. In this complex sentence, I wonder if I shall fall right through the earth, we found the subject and the predicate, in which the conjugated verb is wonder, which is a transitive verb of thinking, answering the question what, and giving us the noun clause, if I shall fall right through the earth, as an answer, which subordinator is a subordinate conjunction if. This noun clause is composed of the structure of a if-whether clause, the function of a direct object, context, after a transitive verb of thinking, and the main use of an indirect question. Now, let's go to the page 137. In this complex sentence, I don't even know what a mock turtle is, we can identify the subject and the predicate. In the predicate, we found the conjugated verb don't even know, where the main verb corresponds to a transitive verb of thinking. The dependent clause is a noun clause, with the structure of a WH clause, due to that the subordinate clause started with a subordinating conjunction, what. The function of this clause is direct object. The context in this case is after a transitive verb of thinking, and the main use is a statement. Let's continue with the page 33. In the following complex sentence, I will tell you how the dodo managed it. We found the subject I, and the conjugated verb will tell, in which the main verb in this conjugated verb is a transitive verb of speaking, answering the question what, and giving us the noun clause, how the dodo managed it as an answer, in which the subordinator is how. This subordinate clause is composed of the structure WH clause, the function of a direct object, context after a transitive verb of speaking, and the main use as a statement. Now that we finish our analysis of noun clauses in complex sentences, let's start with the analysis of relative clauses. But before we continue, let's review a little bit of relative clauses. They are subordinate clauses, also known as adjective clauses, that are introduced by a subordinator, which refers to an antecedent. That subordinator can be relative pronoun or relative adverb. Relative clauses can be defining and not defining, but depending on the punctuation and the context. But also, you need to remember that subordinators cannot be omitted in non-defining relative clauses, but they can be in defining clauses, just in informal language or when the subordinator are not the subject of the clause. Let's go to the page 19. In the following complex sentence, was I the same when I got up this morning? We found the subject and the predicate. In the predicate, the main verb or conjugated verb is was, and the subordinate clause corresponds a defining relative clause, whose subordinator is a relative adverb with the function of an adverb. and the antecedent corresponds to the time expression this morning. Let's continue with page 81. In this complex sentence, the door led right into a large kitchen which was full of smoke from one end to the other. We found the subject and the predicate. In the predicate, the main verb or conjugated verb is led, and the subordinate clause, which was full of smoke from one end to the other, corresponds to a non-defined relative clause, whose subordinator is a relative pronoun with the function of a subject, and the antecedent corresponds to the common noun kitchen. Let's analyze the next sentence in the page 119 and 120. In this complex sentence, she was walking by the white rabbit who was peeping anxiously into her face. We found the subject and the predicate. In the predicate, the main verb or conjugated verb is was walking, and the subordinate clause who was peeping anxiously into her face corresponds to a non-defined relative clause, whose subordinator is a relative pronoun with the function of a subject, and the antecedent corresponds to a personified animal, a rabbit. And now let's finish our analysis in the page 167. And finally, to end our analysis of complex sentences, the last sentence is: the hatter looked at the March hare, who had followed him into the court arm in arm with the dormouse. We found the subject and the predicate. In the predicate, the main verb or conjugated verb is looked, and the subordinate clause, who had followed him into the court arm in arm with the dormouse, corresponds to a non-defined relative clause, whose subordinator is a relative pronoun with the function of a subject, and the antecedent corresponds to a personified animal, hare. Thank you so much to be part of this analysis of noun and relative clauses into complex sentences from the classical novel Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. I hope that you can learn a lot and see you in the next class.